What do you do with this? What's the word for the thing that you do with this? Strained. Strained. There are few things that can make you as miserable as having a cold. Luckily, there is one home remedy that is universally acknowledged to be the best treatment for the common cold. And of course, I'm talking about chicken soup. So I think it's time to whip up some chicken soup. But, of course, we are missing what I would call the most important ingredient to any good chicken soup, which is the broth. We have no broth, we have no stock, we have no bouillon, we have nothing. But let's have a look in the freezer and see what we might be able to do. Oh yes. Leftover chicken bones and leftover vegetable trimmings. With these two things, we've got almost all of the ingredients we need to make a perfect chicken stock. Okay, let's see what we got here. So we got bones, we got a little bit of skin on them still, we got a little bit of meat hanging on here and there. This is perfect. So this is just what we need to form the base of our chicken stock. This bag, we have loads of vegetable clippings. We got celery, there's onions in there, onion peels, and the onion roots, and some just all sorts of veggie goodness there. Let those thaw for a few minutes so they're not quite frozen anymore. We're going to be using our Instant Pot to make the broth. A lot of broth recipes talk about leaving things simmering in a stock pot overnight. We're going to be using the Instant Pot to speed things up, along with a few carefully chosen steps along the way. Start off dumping the bones right into the Instant Pot, along with a little bit of water. We're going to squeeze a lemon in there. What this step is going to do is going to start the breakdown of the collagen in the bones and speed up a recipe a little bit. The simmering in the water starts the breakdown, and the acid from the lemons also helps. We'll put our Instant Pot on saute. We are going to simmer that for a few minutes. Now, instead of lemon, you could use a different form of acid. You could put in vinegar, that would work fine. You could put in some wine. You could put in some apple cider. Just anything that's slightly acidic that's going to help the collagen begin to break down will help speed things along. And then we'll take the bones out of here and get them into the oven for some roasting. You can think of this step kind of like when you glaze a pan after you've cooked meat in it, to loosen up the bits of flavor that are in the bottom of the pan. Only in this case, instead of loosening them from a pan, we're loosening those bits of flavor from the bones. We're going to let it do this for about 15 or 20 minutes. Alright, we've got the bones removed and we've got them on a shallow pan. And we're going to roast them in the oven at 450 degrees for about half an hour. Now over here, we've still got some liquid left over from simmering those bones in here, and we've got little bits of stuff that came off the bones and is still floating around in the water. We don't want to put that to waste. If you're making a broth or a stock, you're really just flavoring water. And so you want the most flavor that you can and the least wateriness that you can.
So watery, and yet there's a smack of ham to it.
And so we are definitely not going to waste this beautifully flavored water in here. So what are we going to do? We are going to empty our bag of leftover vegetable parts from the freezer into this water, turn the simmer back on, and those can simmer in this water while the bones are roasting in the oven. This will begin to release some of the flavor that's in the vegetables and combine it with the flavor that's in that simmer water. The goal here is just to grab as much of the flavor as we can and don't lose any of it along the way. Speaking of flavor, why are we roasting these? Well, the main thing that this is doing is enacting the Maillard reaction, which is where the browning of meats occurs. That produces a very important flavor component that there's just no other way to get. And so flavor is the main reason that these are in the oven. So now we've got the bones out of the pan. They're cooling on a plate here. I've also removed the vegetables out of the Instant Pot. They are going to be going into the fridge to wait their turn, but the bones are next. Now while we're doing the bones, they're going into the Instant Pot next. We don't want to leave any of this nice flavor on the pan. And so we are going to add a little bit of hot water here.
So watery.
Just a little. And then just scrape it all loose with a spatula. And when we've done that, we will dump this into the Instant Pot along with the bones. So the next thing we're going to do to these bones here is we are going to break them. The marrow inside the bones is an excellent flavor component for broth and stock. So we are going to break these bones open so that the water has a better ability to interface with that marrow. So we're just going to grab a hammer, cutting board, and I'm going to use just the pestle part of my mortar and pestle. Now you don't want to smash it because you might end up with little bits of bone that make it through your strainer. You don't want that in your soup. But this, perfect. There's that delicious marrow right there, ready to go into our stock. The other thing that breaking those bones is going to do is it's going to help speed up the process. So the quicker that the water can get in there and start breaking down the bones from the inside out is the more flavor we're going to get from the marrow and the more collagen we're going to draw out of the bones, and we're going to have a much better broth much faster. Now we just need to add water. Okay, the bones and the water are now in the Instant Pot. They're going to go in there for 2 hours. The longer that they're in there, the deeper flavoring you're going to get out of this stock. It is an Instant Pot. It's supposed to move a little bit faster. The pressure that an Instant Pot is able to provide also helps speed things along. Make sure that this is sealed, that it's not unventing. Time has come. Love that sound. It's like I win every time. Instant Pot just finished, so it's ready to be strained. So here it is. Here's our beautiful chicken stock. Now, one thing I didn't do in this, and you might have noticed, I didn't really season this. There's no salt, there's not any pepper in there. You don't want to put too much into the stock at this point, because this is not the soup. I'm going to make soup out of this later, but this is not the soup. And so the more seasoning that I would put into it at this stage, the less I'm able to do with it later. The more that I season it now when I'm making the stock, the more that I limit what it can become later. And I don't want to limit what I can change this into by over seasoning it at this point. So now let's just have a taste of this. Yeah, it's pretty nice. That has a lot of that chicken flavor in there. You get a little bit of the vegetables in there. You can tell just by looking at it, it's a lot darker than a lot of the chicken stocks that I've made. And I think it has to do with that extra time we took roasting those bones before we added everything in. So, got our chicken stock made. Later I can make some chicken soup, and man, I'm on the road to recovery. Well, thanks for watching another episode of Cooking Without a Full Pantry. Best health to all of you. Oh, one more thing. So the next thing you do before you put it away is you need to get this cooled down quickly. Right now it's too hot for any bacteria to start growing, but as they cool down, that's going to happen quickly. And so we want to get this cooled down especially quickly. I got an ice bath ready over in the sink. I'm going to pour this into the ice bath. Then it can either go back in the bowl, get covered with plastic wrap, and go in the fridge, and it can store that way for up to a week, I'd say. Or you can get it right into some freezer bags at that point, freeze it for later. There you go. Hey, I'll say just one more thing. So the Instant Pot did a great job speeding this up, speeding up the process. The one thing the Instant Pot doesn't do well is reduce. Since it's a contained pressure vessel, it's not actually reducing the volume very much. And so you may need to spend more time reducing that soup down than you would normally do. So don't be afraid of making stock. We made all this today with just some leftover bones and some leftover vegetable scraps I had in the freezer. Perfect example of what you can do even if you don't have a full pantry.